the brochures didn't speak to what we actually were having a conversation with the clients with, because they weren't necessarily in front of the client. So yeah, so that communication within companies sometimes is challenging. And it's the sales reps who's, you know, they keep trudging along no matter what. And that's what we're going to talk about, these hacks that can have you be successful regardless.
Team, keep them coming. We're asking you, if you scroll up to the top, you can see, I'm actually going to paste it again.
Oh, you're going to do that.
So I'm going to paste it down there again. So look into the comment box. We have 30 attendees. I see Andre, I see Brendan, I see Carl, I see Renee and Patrick. I've got Todd here. We see Chris and Leanne. Welcome, everybody. Hey, we'd love to see responses from everybody. Give us your name, your location, and the #1 issue that you face with productivity as a sales professional. That's going to help us just make this a more relevant conversation for you. Michelle, you've inspired me. I'm getting my green screen going on. I ordered it and everything. You are the inspiration.
I am the standard. No, I'm teasing. Yes. Thank you.
Become the standard. Now, once I saw the Lifehack Bootcamp logo floating above your left shoulder, I thought, I have to have that.
I love that.
There you go.
I need to take
and I don't even consider myself a, you know, technology, you know, wizard. And I learn as I go. You know, I see things and ask questions. I ask lots of questions.
Love it.
It looks like do we have some new responses? Oh, we 1 minute out, 60 seconds out. We have Carl from Dallas, Texas, and we don't have any new responses, but welcome everyone. I see you guys are logging on. We have around 40 attendees now. Thank you. There's a question in the comments. Feel free to answer that. And we're going to be getting started in about 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah, I see Brandon Everett from Salt Lake City. What's up, Brandon? He says, I too struggle with managing prospecting, selling, and the daily upkeep, including CRM. From Carlos Ortiz coming in from SoCal, I have trouble securing meetings and or discovery calls on a consistent basis. Awesome. Thank you, Carl. So by the way, if these turn into actual questions, we're just asking right now what your big issues are. If you formulate a question between now and when we're done, there is a Q&A little box there that you can send us your questions. So there's actually a question box. So, and we've got Michelle. You can also put it into the comment box because Michelle is moderating for us and she will grab those questions as well. So guys, bubble up any questions. You have me, professional productivity coach, and you have Rod today, professional sales professional. And so professional sales professional. And I'm a professional talker. So you've got us, so use us, okay? Stump us, you know, give us your hardest questions.
Yes, and are we ready to get going?
Let's launch.
Let's do it. You know, one of the occupational hazards of being a productivity coach is I can never be late to anything.
Okay.
If I'm late even by 30 seconds, there's something they'll be like, this is a productivity coach and he's not even on time. So I've got to be like 15 minutes early to everything.
Yes. And are you launching this as the host or are you having me launch this as the host, the presentation?
I think you're driving, right, Michelle?
Okay. I was just double checking because I know you had. And hold on.
I think it's also better because of my the internet things. What'll happen now, because you're co-host, is if I do happen to drop off, I'll just run over there and catch my backup, and then you'll still be driving, so it won't affect the screen share.
And
I see Domingo from Los Angeles.
Hold on, everyone. All of a sudden, I had it all set up to go.
It's okay. We got some questions here on the chat bar.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Kira from Seattle, what's up? Thanks for engaging us. Your challenges are creating time to apply effective prospecting strategies. Hear you loud and clear. Michael from Indianapolis, reaching out to too many contacts within the company while prospecting. We've got Andre Amaral from Brazil. Biggest problem is the exchange of information among peers worldwide. I'd love to hear more about that one. Jeremy Delaplane says, can you repost the questions? I think we're not asking questions yet. We will repost the questions once they're being answered. Right now, we're just asking people where they're from and what their #1 issue productivity is.
And
from Los Angeles, one of my biggest challenges.
Am I losing you?
Go ahead.
And I'll be honest, I'm a little stuck right now on the presentation. I had it up and I seem to have misplaced it. So
let me see. I'm sure I must have it on my side.
No, I have it. I just don't have it in presentation mode.
Oh.
Which is interesting because it's one of those things that.
Full screen. Let's see. All right, guys, thank you so much for your patience.
Yes, thank you.
1 second. We're just getting our presentation right. I'm sure you've been there.
Oops. And no one will ever believe I just did a presentation yesterday without any hiccups.
That's how it works.
It's just like literally, and so I'm in that moment of, so that's what but it's not in full mode.
Yep, it's good. It's full mode.
It's full mode? Okay.
Yep, let's go.
Yes, let's go. Okay, productivity hack for salespeople. Thank you all for being patient. And this is going to be an absolutely amazing presentation. So we have our speakers today are Rod Harrison, who is the CEO of the National Association of Sales Professionals, Zamir Bentley, who's the co-founder of Lifehack Bootcamp, and I am your host, Michelle Baker. I'm a speaker, trainer, coach, and I partner with the National Association of Sales Professionals. So we are going to go through this and really get you guys going on our pitfalls and the hacks to help you to overcome these so that you are creating massive sales and tractions and results in everything you're doing out there with your clients and for yourselves and for those companies that you work with. So we have this first pitfall and we're going to go through and allow our gurus here, our guys that are really massively great in sales, Demir and Rod, to speak to us about this first pitfall. Salespeople get beat into reactive posture by unplanned and unwanted work. And we know this gets challenging sometimes. So let's hear it. Rod, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, again, if you're, there's the reactor, the proactor, and the stagnator, and you have to think of yourself as a proactor. You have to kind of develop that identity, and it's like lifting mental and emotional weights. So really remember, a lot of sales people, we react to things because that's where we get the most fulfillment. It's reacting to a boss, reacting to a company structure, reacting to some leverage to keep your job or some goal to win. And we have to start thinking the top 1% of all sales professionals are people that are proactive with their outcomes. So know your outcome, know your purpose, know your actions, and do it proactively. And what that will do is that will allow you to kind of stay out of the UUWs, right? That unplanned, unwanted work. And a lot of those things aren't work, they're just distractions. So I want you to think about that. Just keep that in mind. Remember, it's not normal or natural to be proactive because there is no emotional feedback. There's no emotional satisfaction from doing things proactively. You're not going to get any external sort of reward for it, but you will get long-term reward, you will get financial reward, and you'll get great success.
I love that you opened up with that. This is such a great pitfall. Let's just talk about what UUWs really are, right? There are a set of, I think there's about 80 cognitive biases that every single human being shares, meaning we've all got them. It's not your problem. It's not my problem. We all have these sort of blind spots, right? So for example, we always tend to underestimate the number of calories that we've eaten and overestimate the number of calories we burn on an exercise machine. Science actually proves this, that if you actually have people estimate what they ate and what they exercise, we will consistently underestimate what we ate and overestimate what we burn on an exercise machine. So we tend to have these cognitive biases. We have the same thing when we come to planning our week, right? We tend to underestimate how many unwanted, unplanned projects, tasks, client emergencies are going to land on our schedule for any given week. And we overestimate our capability to do something. So if we think something's going to take, if we think something's going to take 2 hours, It's actually going to take 4 hours, but we tend to always overestimate our ability to get that thing done, right? So UUWs are real, guys. UUWs are a very real demon. And I have found every single one of my clients in every single industry, computer science, IT, sales, school teachers, everybody has UUWs in their week, right? So let's just call that sort of like invisible factor. It's almost like electricity. You know, electricity is real. You can't see it, right? But it shocks you if you touch it, it shocks you. And it's the same thing with UUWs. You can't see them in your week. They're almost invisible to you until they become visible. But when they become visible, they shock the you know what out of you, right? And so here's the thing with sales professionals and IT professionals and recruiters. Why do I bunch those up together? Because those professionals tend to get the highest proportion of UUWs that come into their week. Meaning, you know, if you're an IT guy, you could say 50% of your time in a given week might be things that you don't know on Sunday night that they're going to happen, right? And it's the same with sales and it's the same with recruiting. And so one of the things that happens is because we don't plan UUWs into our schedule, because we don't account for them, if one thing goes wrong in your week, it creates a domino effect into the entire week. You had your week planned, everything was right, you set up your meetings, but then one emergency happens and it creates this negative domino effect that just goes boom, 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 all the way through your week. And it creates that terrible psychological feeling where on Monday, you know you've already lost the week because you were so packed in that if one thing goes wrong, the whole house of cards is going to fall, right? So for me, the reason this is such a pitfall is when we fail to plan UUW time into our schedule. And I think sales professionals need double the UUW time, usually about 8 to 10 hours of unplanned, unwanted work. And I can even show you how that looks in a schedule. It literally is just blocked out and it says UUW because it's time that you're going to need to take in your schedule. You just don't know what it's going to take yet, right? Now, just really quickly before I pass this back to Rod, the thing, when we say pitfall number one is that salespeople get beat into a reactive posture by UUWs, what we're saying is that when you don't proactively make time for unwanted, unplanned work in your schedule, you will just get beat back into a massively reactive posture because you're going to be constantly living in a house of cards that's collapsing. I want to toss this back to Rod. Rod, how does this land with you?
Well, it does. And you said it beautifully. When I get on a jet, and my goal is to get to San Francisco from New York, the pilot would put into the computer how to get to New York. He's going to put in the coordinates in the computer because the plane is not going to stay on course. There's going to be UUWs all along the way, wind, storms, other planes to knock me off course. So there's no direct line of sight. And this is what people do is you start planning with actions. And this is why it's very difficult to get back on par when you're more action-oriented versus outcome-focused. So you want to make sure that you have an outcome, and it's different than the action, so that when you are knocked off, because I don't care how brilliant you are, you're going to have unplanned, unwanted work that comes up, usually from other people, usually some significant emotional event, and you have to get back on course. The way you get back on course is you create a gap between the conscious and the unconscious mind by creating an outcome. And remember, the unconscious mind abhors a gap. So when the plane has to go around the storm, it gets back on course because it was put into the computer, not held in a reactive mind. So what does that mean? Write out your outcomes. Sunday night, write out the must outcomes, not actions, outcomes that you're going to accomplish for the week. And then whatever you do after that, action plans, steps, action steps, all of the things that you might do on an ordinary basis, then you can do those things. But now you've actually worked with all aspects of the mind to get you back focused on the things that really matter.
You know, as a productivity, before we move on to pitfall number two, I just want to say, as a productivity coach, one of the things that I love is when people come to me with what I call an abundance mind. Right? Abundance mind is what's out there right now and everybody's teaching it. Don't be in scarcity mindset, Demir. Don't be so scarce with your mindset. Guys, there are certain things in life that you can't buy more of, you can't create any more of, you can't rent it, you can't beg for it, and one of those is time. And so one of the things that I say with UUWs that's so important is no matter how positive your mindset and no matter how much you're in abundance, If you didn't plan enough time to do all the things that you wanted to do, it's just like having not enough money in the bank account. Like when you get to zero in the bank account, you can keep trying to use the card, but you'll be at the movie theater and they'll say, sorry, you can't go in. Right? So no matter how positive you are and no matter how right your mental game is, and it needs to be, like Rod was saying, if you haven't allocated wisely on the 168 hours you have for the week, you're going to come up short, right? And no amount of mental game, no amount of positive thinking or manifesting is going to fix it. That's why I always say UUWs are the number one thing that sales professionals need to plan into their week for the week. And it's the number one thing that sales professionals don't have. When I look at any sales professional's calendar, I need to see big chunks, at least 8 to 10 hours of just, I don't know what's going to happen, but something is going to happen. Right. And when I don't see that, I always know that this person is in a reactive posture because they're always getting pinched. They're always getting pinched because they plan their week without any grace period, without any grave unit, without any UUW time. Awesome. Let's move on to pitfall number 2. And guys, we're just doing these pitfalls to set the stage a little bit. I would love to hear from our attendees. We got 72 attendees. Thank you, Andre. Thank you. And guys, I want to hear what you think about these pitfalls. We want to hear from you. We want to react to your comments as well. Awesome.
Yeah, so pitfall number 2, salespeople tend to wait for their company to create a cohesive productivity system for them. So again, we're getting back into that waiting game, right? And so we know, as we've heard it here, that 86,400 hours is ticking away while you're waiting. So Demir, would you like to address this?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's not a solution here. We're not even in solutions yet. We're just talking about the problems, right? We tend to have this victim attitude of like, well, I'll get my stuff together once the company gets its stuff together. Have you heard of this, Rod? Have you seen this or felt this in your own life?
Absolutely. I think, again, we forget that being a sales professional is one step away from being an entrepreneur, one step away from having your own business, one step away from you are in an influence business. So just really think about that as you think about this pitfall, right? You think about that when you think about a company needing to build a productivity system for you.
Yeah, I mean, guys, the truth is in a perfect world, absolutely. In a perfect world, everybody is taken care of. In a perfect world, everybody gets equal education. In a perfect world, right? But we are very far from a perfect world, right? And companies are not on that level right now where they're going to teach you a productivity system that is rational. We really it's not going to come top down, straight up. And it's not just sales professionals, it's every single company. Most companies, I'd say 99 out of 100 companies, haven't gotten the memo that you need to have a common language of productivity to have a really effective company. So guys, don't wait. Don't be a victim to this and don't wait. Create your own productivity language, your own productivity system. And I think this is a big pitfall because a lot of us are in this waiting period where we're like, I would love to be more productive. I would love to be more organized. I'm just waiting for my sales manager or CEO or whatever to come in and give me sort of their official productivity language. And guys, you'll wait till you've got gray hairs. It's just never going to happen. So that's sales pitfall number 2.
And if it does happen, it might not fit your style. Remember, again, there's different personality types around being productive. There's different styles of communicating to yourself, communicating to your team. And a lot of organizations are going to use the one that worked for the leaders, right? Which can be very different. So this is where you have to take that massive responsibility and treat this like it's your business, right? Your influence is your business.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with all of these answers. So we're going to move on to pitfall number 3. And this one is, in sales, your mental reserves get depleted easily. The key is to have a practice that nurtures a mental game. And I love this. I'm the queen of 2-minute breaks. I love to take a 2-minute pause and just ground and center myself, right? So we'll hand this to Rod first. Rod, what do you think about the mental game?
Well, again, people buy for emotional reasons and they justify with logic. And so when you start recognizing, and this is a fundamental belief system for me, from everything I've accomplished in my life, is for people to forget that we are emotional creatures. Calm is an emotion. Confidence is an emotion. Certainty is an emotion. And if you come to the table with massive uncertainty and other things like that, it's going to knock people off. So I want all of you to think you are already playing a mental and emotional game. So when you think about mental, that's emotional, that's physical, that's energetic. All of those things fall into that mental category. So I want you to really, really, really recognize that the most important thing you can do is make sure that you make your state is strong, that there's energy, that there's power. Recognizing that no matter what you sell, there's an emotional foundation to it.
Yes.
Yeah, I would just add on to that and say I've been blessed to be able to perform in 4 different sectors, right? So when I started out, I was 22 in government, and I was the youngest policy advisor to a governor in the United States. Then I went into finance. Then I was a technology CEO. Very briefly thereafter, I focused on sales. And then after that, I was a coach. And I will tell you, sales, hands down, is the most mentally exhausting job I've ever had in my life. Hands down. Hands down, not even close, not even a second or third place. It was like sales was up here and everything else was down here. Because at the end of the day, you know, you can pretend it away all you want. You are putting yourself on offer and getting rejected. You are putting yourself on offer and getting rejected. And the capital that costs you, and the mental capital, we have to respect that. I'm not here to just give you a quick answer to it either. You really just have to say that this is something big. It's something you have to respect. It's something that exacts a toll. And anybody who's been in sales has felt that toll. You've probably felt it this week. You could be feeling it right now. And so if you don't have a self-care practice and a mental game practice to refill that well when you're constantly draining it, and I again, when 9 out of 10 sales professionals I talk to are burning it from both ends, and they're just pulling out of the well, and they're pulling out of the well, and they're pulling out of the well. They don't get enough sleep. They're not getting enough rest. They're not doing things just for them, just to refresh. So at the end of the day, a strong mental game and sort of like a physical stamina game is so important, because I think we tend to think we're robots. I love that Rod said this. You know, we tend to think that we're just these robots that can just execute. All I have to do is call 20 people. That's it. That's all I have to do. Ignoring the mental cost and the emotional cost of calling 20 people, right? And so there's, again, invisible things that we can't really see and put our hands around. Like, what's the mental and emotional toll of getting on the phone and calling 20 people and getting a no, or getting a not now, or please call me later, or just a rude person, right? You don't see that. You can't quantify it, but it's there. And anybody who's been in sales knows it.
Yes, yes. I'd like to share on this one. I think of the mental game like athleticism, and there's no athlete at the top of their game that doesn't practice before they go out into the game. And that's, as a sales rep, that I found that getting myself in state before every call, before every contact, is what allows me to stay at the top of my game and be engaged for that client, to give them the best of the best every time. So.
And the second you stop, like anything, the second you stop, you're going to get rusty, right? Yes. You guys know LeBron James does not expect to take a season off and just not practice, not lift weights, not go to the gym, and then just step back in and be championship. Right? It doesn't work like that. The second you stop, you start degrading from peak state.
Exactly. Exactly. So are you all ready to move on to the hacks?
Let's do it. I'm ready. I'm ready. Because now we've been talking about problems. These people are probably like, all I'm doing is talking about my problems right now. Let's talk about solutions.
I know, right? So hack number 1, the limiting mindset. I have so little control over my time, so I might as well not control it at all. Uh-oh. So Demir, you want to hit this one out first?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a fundamental thing, right? When we again, this is something I think that people fall into as a trap, right? This idea that I don't have enough time, right? And the problem with the I don't have enough time is that you start to self-identify as somebody who's being victimized by your clients, your time, your schedule, your company, regardless of who you personally point the blame at. When you start to really believe this, what happens is you actually start to give up. And you can feel that give up moment when you're not even trying to get ahead of your schedule. You're not even trying to be in ownership or be on offense. You can feel that moment where you say, man, I'm just going to try to survive my week. I'm just going to survive my week. And the number one shift that you can make here, the number one shift is to step back into ownership and start to identify as the kind of person who is in what we call extreme ownership of their time, right? Extreme ownership. I'm going to toss it to Rod here, but since you put it on the screen, this is what we call our extreme ownership mantra, right? And I like to write it on a sticky note and put it right in front of me, because this is the kind of thing that I need to stay present to, not just once, not just twice. I'm talking about every single week, every single day. I need to be reminded multiple times a day. I'm the kind of person who stands in complete ownership of my time and schedule, and I do not allow myself to be victimized by my job, by my clients, anybody, right? And because that fundamental truth can just get beaten down by this job, to the point where you feel like your client owns your time, where your boss owns your time, where anybody owns your time except you.
That's
Absolutely.
Beautifully
Absolutely.
said.
Absolutely. Rod, would you like to
Well, I think Demir said it beautifully. And I think, again, it's all around ownership is responsibility, it's accountability, it's capability, and ultimately it's vulnerability of saying that I don't know and I have to find a way. So again, a lot of times people are very arrogant to say, well, Raj, you don't know my situation and this is what you're here. You never worked for this boss or this company or this situation. And guys, I really want to challenge you. I don't have to know that you're dealing with 100 billion brain cells, that we're using so little of our potential. So sometimes step outside of the role of being a sales professional and step into the role of being a human genius, right? That has a massive capability that's acting out of patterns and conditioning. And what you want to do then is do what we talked about early on, is that you have to give your mind, not just your conscious mind, not just the strategic, logical mind, but you have to give your whole mind the outcomes that you want to accomplish. So I want you to remember the acronym OPA, Outcome, Purpose, Action. Well, you have to know the outcomes that you want to accomplish. And a lot of times people are really, really afraid. And I want you to think about this too. We talked about uncertainty is the great time killer. Michelle spoke to, we have 86,400 seconds every day. That is the great equalizer in life. No matter how much money you have, no matter how much land you own, or how many companies you own, everybody gets the same amount of time. How you invest your time in your genius, in your ability, in your creativity, in your power, in your emotional, mental, physical power is what's going to determine your level of success. So even without references, please trust that you have to take back ownership, which means you have to be proactive in how you organize your time, how you leave time for things that are going to pop up, the UUWs in your life, and really recognize that it's not going to be comfortable at first, and it is absolutely necessary.
Yes.
Can we go back one slide? I just want to see the first slide again. So again, the hack number one is switching this, moving and almost recognizing when you're falling into this, which could be, by the way, you could fall into this multiple times a week and get out of it multiple times a week. I don't want to say that this is a permanent state of affairs, right? But some people, when they fall down into this, can be here for months at a time and not even trying to shift this. Now, one of the things that I get here, I love Michelle and Rod, like people come to me and say, Demir, I only have 2 hours a week to myself. Other than what my clients have and the sales time, and I only have 2 hours a week. And I think when they say that, they mean it as in, well, that's so little that what's the point? And my retort to them is, if you only have 2 hours a week that you can control, that becomes even more important that you can control those 2 hours, right? I think people think that the less and less time that they have that they get to control, somehow it becomes irrelevant. Well, I've only got 5 hours to myself in a week. So that's so little that it's practically nothing. I might as well just give up and just float or just be in reaction mode. And I would say the less time you have, if you only have 30 minutes a week to yourself, that becomes your most important 30 minutes. You need to take a radical ownership of that 30 minutes. So, the less time that you have control over, the more important it is that you actually exercise control over that time. And so guys, the number one, if we can go back to the next slide, number one tip for you guys is to give yourself that mantra, right? Or actually give yourself that mantra, which is, I'm the kind of person, complete ownership of my time and schedule. I do not allow my time or my job to be victimized by anybody else. That mantra alone, for me, is so critical to remind myself of on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Just, it's one of those ones that I have just pasted right up in front of myself because it's so easy as a sales professional to get beat back into a state of victimhood, right? By just the constant onslaught of UUWs and interruptions and multitasking. Now, let's go to that next one. The second one, which is really an extension of the first, is I want to challenge you to do this, team. I want to challenge you to pre-plan your week this Sunday. If that's not something that you're, and I'm not saying, by the way, just to be clear, pre-planning is not scanning your schedule. That's not what I'm talking about. Everybody scans their schedule on Sunday. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about getting into your schedule, looking at all the things you have to do and getting in your schedule and say, here is the times I'm going to do that. And I challenge you to put at least 5 hours of UUW time in your schedule. I mean, time that's just set aside to deal with crises that you don't even know are going to happen yet, right? And what's going to happen is when you shift into ownership and you take actions that reveal that you're shifting into ownership of your time, you're going to immediately, within 1 week, it won't take 2 weeks, it won't take 3 weeks, it won't take 4 weeks. Within 1 week, you're going to start gathering evidence that it works. You're going to see immediate evidence. Maybe it doesn't work perfectly, but immediately, the second you shift into ownership of your time, you're going to see that it works. And I want you to start gathering those pieces of evidence, because once you get that positive feedback loop going in your mind, you will realize the truth of this statement. You don't have to be victimized by your time, and you're not at the mercy of your clients. You're not at the mercy of your boss or your sales manager. You get to be the boss of your time, but you have to live like no one else if you want to live like no one else. I love that saying by Dave Ramsey. You guys know him. You got to live like no one else if you want to live like no one else. And that means spending some time on Sunday pre-planning your week. That means allocating time for UUWs. That means being the kind of person who has sticky notes with mantras in front of yourself that says, no, I am not, I'm feeling victimized by my time, but that's not the truth. I am in charge of my time. And you shift that mindset.
Yes, absolutely. Rod, did you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I would say take it a step further and say, unless you live in a communist country, you own all your time. You're choosing to do this. And when you choose to do something, make a decision, and nobody owns your time. What Demir is saying is, he gets this so many times of people kind of coming in as a victim and then not wanting to be a victim. So remember what empowers people to do this is saying that I chose to be in this situation, that I chose to take this job, that I chose to be in sales. I chose to focus on this client. And that keeps the ownership and the empowerment. And it might not be, the timing though is tied to someone else where you're actually putting that time. But if you take it to that step, that's going to allow you to create and keep the emotional power of ownership, even on things that's outside of what you would consider your control. You start bringing back into your control, utilizing your power, your creativity to get things done in a very high and powerful way.
Can I throw 2 stories in here just really quick? First story is when I was in sales, they wanted to do exclusively in-person pitches. And I was in New York City, and I could probably get 2 in-person pitches done per week. And I moved everything over to Zoom, and I just created my own personal policy. I am not going to do any in-person pitches anymore unless there's money on the line. I will walk into an office in order to shake hands and collect a check, but I am not going into an office unless we're talking about money. And my CEO, my sales manager was like pissed off about it. I didn't budge. My CEO comes in and sits down with me, and I showed him my numbers, and I said, I can pitch 10 people a day, or I can pitch 2, and here's my sales numbers, right? And it's funny, he looked at it, looked at the math, policy changed. More recently, I had a salesperson on my team who was amazing, and I wanted her, but she could only work for me 3 days a week. And I had another person who's working for me 5 days a week, really plus weekends, right? And she would come in and in 2-3 days a week, do the same amount of sales as somebody who was working 5 days a week. And what she had to do is she just had to cut things. I'm not doing that. You wanted me to do this? I'm not doing that. I'm only doing the things that are effective. I can't tell you how quickly the company policy will change when you show that it's effective.
Absolutely.
Company policy, it seems so like such a chained in box. And then the second you start outperforming other salespeople, company policy goes, wait, Michelle, what are you doing?
Yes.
Whatever Michelle is doing, it's the new policy because it's working.
Someone just put all in caps, great point. And I was just going to tie the bow on that and say that I had massive success in the varied companies that I work for, because every time I took a sales role, I owned it, right? So you've heard them say, own your role. And it was that stepping into the role and understanding this is what's going to make it successful. Yes, these are the directives, these are the job descriptions, but they've hired me as a creative being, right? Not just to be someone to go there and be an order taker, but actually to evolve in this role and add my essence to it, my Michelle on it. So whoever's out there, look at how you can step into your role today, even after this call and tomorrow, and add your little secret sauce into it, because that's what makes the sale special. So
somebody was asking for a specific example of that. And I just want to say that this person in this one example that I'm giving, there was a whole process of warming up the leads, a very clear, you must do this, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We had a warm up process and you need to document everything. And she didn't have time to do all that. So I asked her, what are you doing to get the same results in half the time? And she said, well, I'm just looking at my list and I'm picking out my favorites, and I create a favorites list and then I follow up with those people. It was that simple. She was just using her intuition to create a sub list out of the bigger list. And then she was just prioritizing and making her own decisions on the fly. And that we just changed the policy. We created a favorites list, and that is now the new policy. Policy changes as fast as you show that it works.
Exactly. Exactly.
Absolutely.
This is a really good one. So we are going to mosey on here to hack number 2. And this is a good one as well, the win-win communication. So salespeople tend to get stuck in a win-lose, feeling like, oh, if I don't do this, I'll lose the sale. Communication paradigm where clients win and they lose, or vice versa. So what we want to talk about here is what the win-win actually is. So I'll hand this off let's give it to Demir.
I feel like I'm on a game show. I'm like, oh my goodness.
It's a surprise.
It's a surprise. Guys, everybody knows about DHV, DLV, demonstration of lower value, demonstration of higher value. We do this a lot. If you're a man, you're very commonly associated with this because from the dating world, right? Are you giving off vibes that you value yourself at a high level? Or are you getting off vibes that you don't have confidence in yourself, right? That you don't value yourself, that you don't value your time, right? And it's the same thing in the sales world, right? That we can send signals to people that we don't value our time. And I think the sales environment is the worst for this, because I think we've somehow allowed, through the process of, I don't know what, we've allowed it to just sort of be like, Rod, will you please be my client? And I will just do anything if you would be my client. And my time, I am nothing, Rod. I am nothing. You are God. I am nothing. I would love to pick up the phone at 12 o'clock on a Friday to answer your call. Rod, thank you so much for being my client. And we've lost this idea of two peers meeting as equals in the market, right? Like, if I'm bringing a product you truly need, then I'm actually 10xing your business. Right. So I'm actually and for me with my business, I'm always reinforcing that we're meeting as peers and that I'm here to give them 10x value. Right. And so when we do that, what happens, and we onboard that correctly is what happens is we develop what we call win-win relationships, where I'm not creating, and it's specifically in a communication policy, because I get salespeople all the time saying, I've got my clients and even my sales managers and peers, we've created this win-lose, or lose-lose is the worst, where my client doesn't know how to ask certain questions, doesn't know where to get their questions asked. So they're asking me, and they're asking me at all the wrong times. They've got my personal cell phone number. And now I can't ever focus, because at any given moment when I try to focus for an hour, I'm getting bombarded from all of these people communicating to me at all hours, at all times, and they expect an instant turnaround. Guys, you are in a lose-lose communication strategy. Now, let me just be really clear about this. You might think that it's win-lose, meaning your client wins and you lose. But even if your client has to wait for 30 minutes for your email, that 30 minutes for them, they don't know if it's going to be 30 minutes or 3 weeks, right? They have no certainty of when they're going to get that response, right? So I like to say in my company, every single time a client emails us, it's a failure. Every single time a client emails us, it means that we failed to answer their question before they even emailed. We failed to give them a resource where they could answer their own question. We failed to give them an opportunity to reach out to somebody and get an instant answer, right? So every single time a client's reaching out to us, it's a failure of ours to put a better communication system in place, right? Now, if you ever email me, which I encourage you, email me, Demir@lifehackbootcamp.com right now, and you'll see my autoresponder. The second you email me, you get an autoresponder that sends you my communication policy. So the very first time you email me, you get my communication policy, and it tells you specifically how to get a 7-day return time, a 24-hour return time, and an instant return time, right? And so this is just a small example of a win-win communication policy where what I do is I come into the market, and when I create a relationship, I make sure from the very beginning that relationship, including the communication, is set up so that I'm winning and they're winning. Does that make sense? And I've got some more examples I can share, but I want to toss it to Rob.
Well, we talked about it before, the strong mental game and recognizing that people buy for emotional reasons and they justify with logic. So number one, you definitely, from an intrapersonal perspective, you have to be in the right state where you have to be in a valuable state and make sure that you transfer that energy to them. So win-win is just that, win-win. So I always write out before any communication how I want the call to end. No matter what, I write it out. And that's the last thing I want to think about is the end of that conversation, the end of that communication, and what is value to the customer only. Baked into the system is my commission. Baked into the system is my financial reward. But making sure that if I'm going to offer that value, it's in my tone, my physiology, my energy, my eye contact, that they're feeling this level of certainty and confidence coming across, because the last thing I did was celebrate how I wanted it to be by visualizing it. Second thing is be really careful about apologizing for their time. Thank you for your time. No, your time is just as valuable. Right? It's just as valuable. Be very, very careful about, because you don't want to take an inferior posture and you don't want to take a superior posture. You want to take an equal posture with rapport, equal posture with rapport, because all you're doing is you're representing uncertainty. I don't know what you're bringing me. Only thing I can do now is feel what I feel when I speak to you so that I'm willing to break my pattern and listen to what you're offering. That's sales is. I'm busy, I got things to do, you're interrupting my pattern, I'm in hypnosis, your job is to break it, and your job is to get me to listen to you. What is listening? Is taking in information with empathy and without judgment. That's all I want you to do. I'm not manipulating, I'm offering you value to help your business, but you can't know. That's why we have salespeople. If you could intuitively know what's going to support your business, then we wouldn't need sales professionals. I would just call companies and go, my intuition just told me I needed to have your product. But that's not going to happen that way. So remember, nobody is rejecting you. There's no such thing as a win-lose. It's all in your head. Your job is to be so confident, so value-based, externally focused, internally motivated with your powerful emotion. Make contact, offer value in your emotional state, your communication, based on how you've already seen the ending of that level of communication. You give that a try, combined with the strategies and techniques you just heard from Demir, and you got a win-win-win situation going.
So think about almost like a scenario A, scenario B, right? Scenario A, somebody comes in with Rod, they've got a huge intention, two equals meeting in the market, you've set this idea of I'm not even envisioning a scenario where I win and Rod lose, or Rod loses and I win and Rod loses, or Rod wins and I lose. I don't even see those scenarios. I'm only accepting in my head a scenario where we work together and we both win in a big way. Now roll that down, right? Roll that down one. Now, when I go to onboard Rod as a new client, now because we're equals and I wasn't begging for him, the very next thing, and this is a key, we can actually scroll down one, Michelle, because this is going to be the next one. The key tip here is you only get one opportunity to onboard your client. And I was talking to Michelle in another call. I said, if you're a woman and you let a man treat you badly when you start dating him, the idea that you're going to let him treat you badly for the first 2 months and then somehow you're going to set it right later, you're going to reset that expectation. Every woman here who's watching is like shaking her head. It's never going to happen. And similarly, if you set that demonstration of lower value with respect to your client and then you don't onboard, what they're going to assume is that whatever's good for them is good for you. If I want to email you right now, that's good for you, right? If I want to call you in the middle of the night, that's good for you. You only have one chance to onboard your client and tell them how to get a win-win in their communication. And the way that I do that is simply by having an onboarding process for your client. The simplest way is to have a PDF that you send to them, a one-page PDF. Here's what success looks like. If you ever need to communicate with me, here's a successful win-win communication. If you need to get me within 48 hours, put this. My easy one, guys, is if you need to get me within 48 hours, put urgent in the subject line. If you need to get me right away, put emergency in the subject line. Right? So this is the second tip, right? Give clients a self-serve tiered system. We tend to think that, it's binary. Rod needs to either never respond to my calls or respond to them immediately. But when Rod gives me a sort of an ability to self-serve and say, Demir, if you need a response within 7 days, just send the email and I'll process my inbox within 7 days. If you need a response within 48 hours, just be sure to put the word urgent in the title. And if you need a response immediately, put the word emergency in the title. Notice now, instead of it being binary, now I know with certainty, and guys, the word certainty, underline that. Your client actually doesn't need an instant response with you. They need instant certainty about when they're going to get a response for you. That's so important that I'm going to repeat it. They don't need an instant response. They need certainty about when they're going to get a response. And if they know that when they put urgent in the title, that Rod will, never failing, get back to them within 48 hours, they can actually self-serve and say, you know what, this isn't an emergency. I could wait 2 days. They'll put urgent in the title and they'll send it off. And all Rod has to do is make sure that he fulfills on that expectation, that he doesn't let an urgent email go for 7 days. He doesn't let an emergency not get responded to, right? So guys, scroll back one, Michelle.
Yes.
So the number one, just going to repeat it, is don't miss the chance to onboard a new client and create a formalized, in written win-win communication policy where they know with certainty how to communicate to you and how to get the responses that they need. And next slide, Michelle. And guys, make sure that that includes a tiered choice system for how, so that there's not just I email you and I wait for a response, but if you want responses in these types of ways, the best way is to text me or the best way is to call me. Tell your client the best way and give them a menu, not just one. Okay?
Rod.
Now we got a great question here. I'm going to actually toss this to Rod, and then I'll take a stab at it. Rod, somebody in the box said here, but how do you manage clients who deem everything as urgent?
Well, I think you answered it in a very good way, Demir. Remember, our job is to manage uncertainty, right? That's what we're creating for people. When we're asking people to change, grow, improve, step outside of their comfort zone, even if they need it, we've brought in uncertainty into their world. And remember, people will take death over uncertainty, right? So it's about people that are successful. So what Demir was saying is people that manage or deem everything as being urgent, really, we haven't met that sort of baseline of certainty for that particular person. So remember the framing, you got the answers. Demir did a beautiful job of doing that. Is what they're saying is they're going to past references, and the loudest and the noisiest person is going to be the one that will get the attention of the sales professional or the customer service or the company. And so you got to kind of frame that right up front. Before you do anything, the onboarding and the framing, the actually telling the client exactly what they need to do and really getting them to see and actually qualify what is urgent for the product or service that you're bringing to them. I'll tell my clients, here's what an urgent situation is. Okay, I want you guys to know this. Here's what's urgent with this product, with this service, with this system. Because again, it's all around pattern recognition. You see it already. So frame, frame, frame. And a better way of saying that, pre-frame, pre-frame, pre-frame. Make sure, what is a pre-frame? Actually handling what you know is going to happen up front and doing it in a way with rapport, respect, and then telling them exactly what they need to do when they're feeling this way, okay? And again, go back and listen to the video. Demir did a great job of explaining exactly how to get that done.
I just want to say one thing. I had a funny thing happen really recently where I had a new client came on, and I said, reach out to me whenever it's too much. I'll be sure to let you know. And so she sent me a bunch of emails and then immediately called me and said, why am I not getting responses to my emails? And I said, do you know how many emails you sent me in the last 48 hours? And she said, uh-oh. And I said, 14 emails. You sent me 14 emails in the last 48 hours. I want to be clear with you. That doesn't work for me, right? That's not effective communication for me. So what you're doing is you're disrespecting my time, and you're asking me, you're just hitting the forward button because it's easy, but you're asking me to filter through all of your emails. That doesn't work for me. If you want a client, or if you want a service provider that's going to do that for you, then let's talk about that now right here at the beginning of the relationship, because this might not be a good fit for the two of us, right? And that was a big money client. That's one of my private clients. That would have been a big hit, but I can tell you right now, like, one, I never lose a client when I have that conversation. What happens is their respect for me goes from here to here, because what I'm doing is I'm checking them. I'm saying, no, just like a woman does to a man who starts to try things that's like, dude, no. But you got to do it right up front. You got to say, hey, and what I'll do is I won't avoid the conversation. I'll seek the conversation. I'll look for that conversation. I'm looking for that opportunity to see places where when I get that red flag that I think they're going to start disrespecting my time, I'm looking for an opportunity to say, hey, can I get on the phone with you? Because there's something that's not working for me on my side, right? And I will get in there and I will lean into that conversation, because at the end of the day, they know it. They know it. They know they're not thinking about the email before they send it. They know they're not processing this information. They know they're getting emotional with their email. And when you call them on it respectfully, their estimation of you goes from here to here, and they actually start to see you as an equal and a peer, right? But when abusers only abuse more, and when you give them an opening, they're just going to do it more and more and more and more and more. So you got to have that, like that mental game that Rod was talking about. If your mental game isn't screwed on tight, you're not seeing yourself as an equal, creating a win-win, you're in trouble, because you're opening a window for people to just pour disrespect into.
Yes. So you guys heard it here. You want to train your clients.
Can I say one more thing about this? Weird psychological, just go one slide back. Weird psychological hack. The reason I make people type the word urgent or emergency into the email is that try it right now. Try to open an email subject and put the word emergency in it. If it's not an emergency, you sort of feel like a fool. Like when you're typing the word emergency, and it's not an emergency. I've heard clients say, Demir, I typed an emergency email, and then after I finished, I deleted it and I just put urgent because I knew it wasn't an emergency, right? So it's a subtle psychological thing, but by having them label it themselves as urgent or emergency, if they realize it's not urgent, I'll kick it right back to them. I'll say, is this really, like they'll send me a forward of a news article and put urgent on it. I'll be like, was that really urgent that I read that news article? No, I don't think so. So it gives you a little bit of it's subtle, but it's psychological.
It's a really good hack. So we have approximately about 10 minutes left, and we have 2 hacks to go. So this is number 3.
Speed it up.
Yeah, batching similar tasks. So multitasking is a myth. Oh my God. Why task switching and multitasking are ruining your focus. So I will hand this to Rod.
Yeah.
So multitasking, some of us are in positions where we think we have to do that, but let me support you with the way the mind works and how you can actually get around this consciously. And again, the best way to do it is making sure that you proactively have days where you can stay focused on certain topics or certain areas, certain categories. Some of you are going to be in positions where you can't do that. So what you have to do is you have to consciously switch roles. So I want you to kind of recognize, I have a lot of clients And some of my partners within NASP that bought the company with me are billionaires. And I coached them. And one of the things, and running one client had, or one of my partners had 9 companies, he sold a lot of them now. And he had to switch hats, right? And he played several roles, and that was the key, is he would switch roles. And I want you to recognize that when you have a goal of being anything, you have to give all the roles a respect by actually labeling the role. So what I do on a daily basis is I write down my outcomes under the roles that I play, right? So I'm coaching somebody, if they want to be a millionaire, that's their vision, and it's a kind of a vague vision anyway. Then I ask them, do you understand the roles that are important to being a millionaire? And they go, no. Well, you got to be the investor. You have to be the cash manager, the credit manager, the cash flow manager. I said that. You have to be the risk manager, the estate planner, the tax manager, right? You have to break down all of these roles, and you got to develop outcomes for each one of those roles. This is going to help you chunk information and be able to switch from one task to the other. When people try to go from one action to another action to another action, when their focus is still over in another category and in another role, they get themselves in trouble. So I want you just to start recognizing that. Be conscious and very deliberate about switching the role, especially if you have to, especially if something comes up, one of the UUWs come up and you have to switch a role. When you're massively focused over there, stop, take a breath, and switch the role. Okay, I am being, and you want to say those words, I am being this. That takes 2 seconds, but what that does to this beautiful mind of yours, this beautiful nervous system that is just like a computer, okay, is it allows you now to go into another category. Remember the 4 laws of focus. What you focus on, you find. What you focus on grows. What you focus on seems real. And ultimately, what you focus on, you become. Control your focus by switching roles and understanding and creating an outcome under that role in that time. I hope that wasn't too complicated.
No, that was great. I love that. If you would mind, Rod, just for me, even if you could just put those 4 rules of focus in the chat box, I know that Absolutely. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to drop it into my own notes for this call. Team, bringing the productivity coach perspective from this, one of the things that we're getting an epidemic of is what I call fake ADHD. And fake ADHD is actually people who are adults who never were diagnosed with ADHD, never really had a problem with it, but now somehow in this digital economy are feeling like they've got digital dementia. By the way, digital dementia is a real thing. It's diagnosable. It is, if anybody out there has had problems with their brain where they've been like, I can't remember names, I'm looking for words and I can't remember words. I'm looking for phrases. I can't pull phrases. I don't feel as sharp as I was. I've had clients who've actually gone to the doctor, to the neurologist, because they thought they were really losing brain power, cognitive power. But really all that happens is I start to pull the digital media out there, take the news away from them, take the Facebook away from them, take the distractions away, and then allow them in their job to, instead of bouncing between email, call, email, meeting, email, call, email, meeting, start to consolidate and let their brain ease into whatever role you're doing. If you're doing email, batch email, and be in email. You'd be surprised how efficient you can be doing email when all you're doing is email. You'd be surprised how good you can be on a call when all you're doing is doing calls. You'd be surprised how good you could be with your sales materials and creating decks when all you're doing is creating decks. But when you're bouncing from creative mode to meeting mode to presentation mode, there's actually this, what we call attention residue. Attention residue is where part of your attention is still over here on this other thing, even as your brain tries to move over here. But an interesting number, the University of Irvine came up with a number that said when you switch tasks, it takes you about 25 minutes for your brain to catch up and get to the peak level that you're at the last task. But the problem is we're getting distracted once every 7 minutes, which means that we're never giving ourselves enough time to finally reboot up to that peak focus. We're just staying at this low level of, if you guys ever used to remember the old Macintosh computers with the little rainbow spinners, do you guys remember that? And when the computer just didn't have enough memory, it would just stop working and you would get the rainbow spinner just go on. Well, that's basically what all of our brains are. When you're switching between tasks, you're just getting that spinner wheel where your brain is never fully functioning. You're just waiting for the computer to boot up. So guys, write this down, please. The number one superpower in a digital distraction economy is focus. I'm going to say it again. The number one superpower in a distraction economy is focus. It's not intelligence. Notice I didn't say intelligence. I know people who are so smart and can't even work their way out of a paper bag because they're so distracted and they can't focus their intelligence. And I call it being a laser or being a light bulb, not a laser. A light bulb is light, a laser is a light. A light bulb illuminates everything, touches nothing. A laser cuts through hot metal, right? And so guys, we need to focus that intelligence. We need to focus that intention. I think Rod couldn't have said it any better.
Yes, thank you, Angelique, for typing that into the chat. And so we talked about the implement email batching calls these days. We're at about 3 minutes. We have the fourth hack, and I'll just give you guys a speed round of about 20 seconds each because we want them to know what the offer is and how they can continue moving forward with these hacks for their sales ability. So
yeah, this one's easy because this, guys, I'm going to drop a link in here. This is our program. We call it Focus and Control Time Mastery. So plug your ears if you don't want to hear our little sales pitch. But if you know that you need to be the LeBron James of what it is that you do, and you need to always be constantly doing a little bit of work, a little bit of getting better every single day to stay at that high peak performance, then this might be the community for you. It's really nothing. It's like, $37 a month. But what we do is we actually provide real world accountability for people to get focused, get in control of their calendar, get in radical ownership of their time, and actually have accountability from real people that they're doing it. And so this is probably not for most people, but if you're the kind of person who wants to be part of a community of people who are just 100% committed to being in ownership of the time and experiencing themselves at their peak potential every single day, then the Focus and Control community might be for you. What I'm going to offer for people here is if you buy through that link today, you get a $1 trial for a week. So you can just log in, check us out, sort of sniff around, kick the tires, make sure that we're not fakes and frauds and everything, and decide if you really want to be part of this community. Can you scroll back to the LeBron James ones? I'll just say this. Oh, by the way, Angelique's in our FAST program, the Focus and Control, and she says it's phenomenal. Thank you, Angelique. Guys, at the end of the day, I believe that if you want to live like nobody else, you got to live like no one else. I love that Dave Ramsey says that. It's the best saying in the world, because if we want to be peak sales, if we want to be peak parents, if we want to be at the peak, we have to commit to developing ourselves. And so that's what we're here for. If you know that this is an area of your life that you need to commit to peak performance on, if it might even be something that has gotten really rusty on you, then I would love to serve you in that way. And check us out at pages.lifehackbootcamp.com/fast. And that's it. That's my piece.
And Rod, just
very, very quickly, you have to know where you are before you can grow to where you want to go. And so start identifying certain patterns of influence that you have. How do you communicate with yourself? How do you communicate with other people? What does that emotional sort of leverage come from? Is it internal? Is it external? Is your focus internal, external? What is your style, and how should people communicate, motivate you? How do you motivate yourself? Our seller style assessment will support you. Just join NASP.com and take it. It's absolutely amazing. And guys, thank you so much for thank you for your energy. Thank you for your life force. And thank you for sharing this moment with myself, Demir, and Michelle. You guys are amazing.
So Michelle, I know we're at time, but are we gonna stay over and answer some questions, or do we have any questions?
If we have anyone who has questions and you're able to stay, we have a little bit time with our hosts here who are more than happy to answer your questions. We know reps, you want to go out and see clients, but if you do have the availability to stay, type your questions in and we will start to get those. Would you like them to type them in? Is that the way you want to receive the questions, Demir and Rod?
I think that would be easiest, but by the same token, sometimes people can't find the little question box. So just type them in wherever you can put them in. I see a question here. It's not really a question. I think it was from Brian's from Atlanta, says he's having trouble staying in contact meeting for demos. And I think that was from earlier in the call. And the one says, is this being recorded? Will it be sent later? Yes. From our side, yes, it will be. Yeah. Yes. So that's a solid yes. Team, when you're thinking about, if you're hanging out here and you're thinking about a question, what I find that really stumps me is that people tend to start with the easiest questions and work to the hard ones. And what I would like you guys to do is flip it and ask yourself, what is the most vexing problem in my productivity right now? And try to stump me. And who knows? You could be the first person where I say, wow, you're really screwed. Like, I'm sorry, but you're beyond help. But the truth is that when you come in with the big guns and you bring these big questions like, hey, I don't know how to manage this and this, or hey, my boss is asking me to do this, but I don't see a way out of it. So if you are going to stay and you are going to ask a question, make it juicy. Come hard and see if you can stump me.
Yes, thank you, ABS J. Ellis, who said, thank you all for your time. Great presentation. Michael Squire said, well done. Thank you for your time. Angelique, thank you for being a great participant and keeping that chat going. Is there anyone we have people who are staying on. So you're staying on, waiting for someone else to ask the questions.
Yeah, the lurkers.
Right? That means you have a question. Come on. I challenge you guys to stump these guys.
Yeah, I love it. That's what I go blank sometimes when in the sales process. Can you advise? I'm going to toss that over to Rod. I think he's the best one to take that.
So remember, if you're going blank, it means you're trying to memorize something or do it consciously. And remember, I'm going to keep going back to what we talked about consistently. Know your outcome and be flexible, right? Be flexible. Focus on the customer. You know, I remember learning how to speed read, and the toughest thing about speed reading was you could not memorize or say the words to yourself when you were reading because your brain had it already. So this is where you have to trust yourself, and you have to, again, know your outcome. You have to put your focus on the customer. And I'm going to say one thing that really, really, really is very, very important in controlling focus. I want you to ask yourself three questions that are all focused around the win-win, the customer, and the service that you're bringing to the table in a very, very powerful way. And I'm going to let you come up with those questions. But those will be your three big questions before opening your mouth. It puts you into a really, really great state. Also, make sure that your physiology, your physical expression is very strong. Remember, your job is to provide certainty while building the gap between sort of that uncertainty that you're representing with them and the certainty of the deliverables that you can bring to the table. And your physiology, your focus, and your language will do that.
That was great. What were the three areas that you wanted them to focus on, just in case they're listening again, Rod?
The three areas or
the three questions. So what were?
Again, it's three questions that you're going to ask about the customer, right? So it's again, what am I delivering? What am I going to deliver? Ask a question around that. So let me give you an example. I went into some investors, and the question was, how exactly are they going to celebrate this level of success that we're going to bring with this partnership? Number two is how wonderful are we going to make this journey for them? What is the first thing they're going to say after this presentation about the journey and about how enthusiastic they are about this partnership? And number three is, what are they going to do with the money that's created from this? How are they going to use and spend this in supporting their business? I'll ask those questions before I even start my presentation. And what that does is that puts me in a really, really phenomenal state. Mm-hmm. And it's not about me anymore. And you're not going into that reptilian, to that freeze mode of fear where and that's what happens when you're forgetting your presentation or your sales pitch.
Love it. I've got another question here. And by the way, thank you. We got a lot of them. So we're going to just tackle these as fast as we can. I got another question here, which is from, I think it's Jose, but it's JOS. So I can't see the, what my personality type is a scanner or dabbler that is constantly or easily distracted by the next shiny object, right? And one of the things is, team discipline and attention is a muscle that needs to be exercised. And in the knowledge economy, what Apple and Facebook and Twitter are teaching you how to do is they're cutting up your attention in order to get more of it, right? And this is why we have to be in radical ownership of our attention and our time, because the big tech companies are actually actively fighting over our attention and our time by basically smashing it and trying to fight over the little pieces that are left over, right? And so if you're getting the sense that, like, for those of us who are alive in the 1980s when we still had those phones that had to dial all the way around, so like for those of us who remember times when we could sit down and read a whole book, when we could sit down and just be bored for a second or play a board game, right? And we can't seem to do that anymore without pulling out our phone. And that's because there's active forces working against us. Now, what I want to be clear about this is, number one, Jose, you need to really have a discipline around building attention back, building focus back like a muscle, right? Two, you need to pull out all of the things from your life that are smashing your attention and trying to segment it, right? And number three, watch out for productive procrastination. Productive procrastination is when you are moving rapidly between different things, really taking a hit on your productivity, going actually quite slow, but giving yourself the sensation that you're doing a lot, right? And it's sort of like being drunk. The weirdest thing about being drunk that scientists have discovered is that your performance goes down, but your confidence goes up. Think about how crazy that is. Have you seen somebody drunk? They've got their keys, they're walking in the car, and you're like, dude, you can't drive. And they're like, no, I've never felt better in my life. I could drive, right? Their confidence is going up even though their performance is going down. And so multitasking and that dabbler scanner personality is sort of like being work drunk, because your confidence that you're getting something done is going up when every measure of your productivity shows that it's actually going down.
Yes.
Absolutely true.
That was really good. We're going to go to the next one. It says, right, it's for teams looking to get going. How do you divvy up the time of the leader or the department or company to get involved in sales versus working on the back end? So basically, how do you get the leader to divvy up their time versus doing sales work versus, working on the business versus working in the business?
Well, I guess you ask for it. That's you use your influence. If if the leader's not on this call, I think you have to ask them, really create an outcome and create a solution for them around how this is going to help them get to what they're looking for. So again, and make sure you're respectful with it, but I think you have to go ask them. And you have to make a case for how, and I guess I'm reading it right. This is a sort of a divvy up the time of the leader of the department to get involved in sales versus working on the back end. Yeah, you have to kind of find out what they're doing, and you have to be careful about being assumptive if you're talking to the CEO or VP of sales. So this is where you gotta be respectful. You have to ask questions, right? You have to find out, and you have to put it into a question form, right? This is my hallucination, is that if we had you more in sales and that we would actually reach the outcome. And respectfully, I'm not sure what you're working on, so I just want to speak out to the benefit of the organization. Something like that you have to do. But kind of be careful with that one. That's a bit assumptive. And being a CEO myself, that might bother me a bit, because I might not be working on the back end or whatever you consider the back end.
Very good.
By the way, I just want to add something to that, because for a long time in my coaching, I was the salesperson, right? So we started as a small company. I'm doing all the sales. Then we bring in a sales team, and we started with a birth defect in our assumption, which is that sales team could never sell as well as I did, right? We just assumed that. We didn't even question that. Everybody said, well, Demir's sales rate is this, and it will always be lower. And what happened is we had an innocent salesperson who came in who hadn't been told. She didn't have that memo. And she just sort of started, and she blew my sales numbers out of the water, right? And what was great about that was that assumption that I needed to be on that call, or I needed to touch that customer for us to make that sale. When we didn't put that seed, when we didn't plant that seed, it didn't grow. right? So just also watch out for that assumption where you're DLVing yourself and assuming that I'm not as, if Rod's not on the call, my ability to sell has been diminished, right? I'll turn it around. If Rod's not on the call, I can say things about Rod that he can't say about himself. You know, I can start to flatter Rod. I can build up Rod. Oh, you can't imagine. I can gate Rod. I can say, man, once you meet Rod, you're just going to be blown away. This is, our clients love Rod. So I can do things when Rod's not on the phone that I can't do when he is on the phone, right? And so I just wanted to also just sort of point out that there's a seed in there that's a dangerous seed, which is that you don't have some magical thing that Rod has or that your sales thing has. And what's great is when people don't know that, they're too innocent to know that, they just go out there and they trip right into a really high closing rate because they don't have that assumption there.
That's right.
Yes, that's really great. So our next question is, I'm told the only place success comes from before work is in the dictionary. How does your program cut the work curve?
I guess I assume they're talking about our program. So I'll speak for our program right now. I would say at the end of the day, I'll just make it, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I'll make it simple. You know, if you're going to go to the gym and work out, there's any working out is going to be better than no working out. So if you work on your productivity without me or without our program, you're going to be better off than if you're working no productivity program whatsoever. But you should expect that if you get the best trainer in the world, what they're going to be able to do is just make sure that every single unit of effort you're putting in is getting the maximum return. That's all we do. There's no magic buttons. You're absolutely right. There's no shortcutting work and success. But what we try to do is we try to make sure, I've gone out there for the last 10 years and studied the ways of working and the mindsets and the tools and technologies and put them together in ways that truly work for people. And you don't have the time to do that. You're a sales professional, you're trying to get a zone of genius on in a completely different thing. So there's certain people in the world that say, you know what? I don't have time to go read every book. I don't have time to go study all of the ways of working of professionals in every different industry. I'm going to hire Demir, or I'm going to be part of Demir's community and have him come in and just sort of download me like the Matrix on what that is. And that's what we do. And if you don't need that, then, you know, there's a lot of other things in the world. Please don't waste your time and money with me if you don't need me, right? There's a lot of things that you need to do and you're a very busy person. But if you know that productivity is a weak point for you and maybe you're successful in spite of your productivity instead of because of it, then we can definitely help you.
Well, it's deductive and reasoning as well. So I would say yes. And a golfer can go out and practice 10 hours a day and somebody can take lessons and beat that golfer in a year. So sometimes you're training things that you have to untrain and they become habits. So hard work sometimes is not good. It doesn't bring success. I can go eat a bunch of donuts every day. I can eat more than you and I'm going to get sick. And sometimes the way we're training ourselves doesn't work for where we're going or where, so again, putting your head down and driving is, again, really in this world today is silly. We have to be more intelligent. AI is going to take a lot of jobs pretty soon. So again, we have to start.
Wow, I'm really glad you brought that up, Rod.
I want to finish my point here.
Yeah, sorry about that.
We have to make sure that we're more intelligent, right? That we're proactive. And I want you to recognize something, guys. You get 86,400 seconds every day. If I don't invest proactively, if I get $86,400 every day and I have to spend it, I can't save it, then I'm going to have to buy assets if I want to be a billionaire. If I don't buy assets, then that money is going to be spent on what I call the opposite of assets or liabilities. I'm going to spend it because I have to. See, I'm either buying assets or I'm buying liabilities. So if you're an asset, if you understand assets around influence, around principle, around strategy, around where things are going, and right, if you understand those things, invest your time there. If you don't, invest your time in people that's their job to do so, right? At this point in our life, we don't really have much of a choice. You don't have to do it. I do agree with Demir. There's plenty of vehicles out there, and find one that fits your style, but it's a must-have.
Yes.
I have to just jump in on that AI thing. The other thing is people seem to think that it's a choice between, oh, just stay the way I am, you know, or improve. But the truth is that the water level is rising fast. right? The environment that we're in, lots of jobs are being altered by technology. Lots of jobs are being gobbled up by technology. And so I live in a world, and maybe this is because I'm talking my own book here, but I think if you look out in reality, it gels with reality. I live in a world where we're either using technology to amplify what we can do as human beings, or technology is going to gobble us up. I don't think there's a middle ground. I don't think we're just going to be able to sit here and wait for this thing to happen around us. We need to be participating with it, learning how to leverage tools, techniques, and technologies to take what we do that computers can't do and magnify that. But the other thing that technology is doing is it's smashing our attention, and it's smashing our focus, and it's smashing our grit and determination. And so I just want to speak to that thing because I thought that's such a topic. We could do a whole hour on that, which is like, what's this sea change that's just about to float over us? And one of the things I love about sales, guys, is computers are not going to sell to people. Not 10 years from now, not 20 years from now, not 30 years from now, people will sell to people. And so what I love about talking about the sea change with sales professionals is as stressful as this industry is, and as taxing as it is also one of the most secure industries that you can be in as we move into this really uncertain period.
I absolutely agree.
You're absolutely right. And what's going to happen is the competition is going to massively improve because it's going to be one of the only jobs, right? So it's going to be a lot of people coming your way. And so this is where you have the opportunity to become the leaders, right? The coaches, the support, because that is going to be one of the few jobs that remain. And it's going to be people that, again, just look at our organizations a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, it'll be 100 times the people knocking at the door because they're going to have to. And that's where, again, that's just reality, and that's just where we're going.
This is excellent. So for anyone watching, I know, Demir, we're going to make these questions part of the replay. And this is great, so people have access to that. So we're going to move to the next question. Angelique, thank you. How to focus and just do what you need to do, get done when you're absolute brain toast. And she put brain toast in caps, so which is a lot of the time. So she's fly somewhere in the world weekly and just crazy busy, but really want to do much more in life, but can't even focus when I get some time. So yeah, this ties back to some of the, you guys want to...
Yeah, so remember, Demir said it best. We got to be careful with this word called time, right? Time is emotion. So we have several people that I know that run 9 companies and they're worth $30 billion and they have the same amount of time as you. And so, I'm going to challenge you there. In some ways, I guarantee you that you're more intelligent. In some ways, I guarantee that you have gifts that they don't have. But what they do is they have a very efficient way of focusing on the 20% that matters and getting rid of the 80% that's just noise. It's that 80-20 principle, and it really does work. And so what happens is that you think about things in life. You got things that are, we live in urgency. We got things that are urgent and unimportant, things that are urgent and important. We got things that are like unurgent, unimportant, which is distraction. We got things that are unurgent but important. That's where you have to live. And that's where I'm going to really challenge you. You got to live in that unurgent, important realm so that when urgency comes your way, you're ready for it. You have to live there, and you have to make sure that you put that little time. It's in the morning. What I'll do is every morning I'll meditate, even if it's for 20 minutes. Because I have to get my mind ready. And it's so amazing how, and Michelle will tell you, we have offices in Spain, we have Envision U, we have a lot of companies. And for me, getting on this, being able to do this podcast is crazy, right? When people think that, okay, we're able to do it. And I have to make sure that my mind starts the right way so that I keep that urgency out. I keep things in perspective. So my time, my meditation, looking at my outcomes before I start getting into my actions, right? Making sure that I'm in a proper state, making sure that here's a big one, guys. understanding that gratitude isn't some Pollyanna word where you're just now appreciating things that you should. And, no. Gratitude, it changes the chemistry in your brain. What it does is it keeps you out of that fear, because fear is sick of being turned on all the time. It allows us to be into that emotional state of mind that allows us to use more of our mind. So I'm going to challenge you. You are just as brilliant as people that run several companies, and most of them are all over the place. Most of them are ADD and learning disabled. And most of the CEOs out there are like that, dyslexic. And you go on YouTube and you can hear all of the stories. So I challenge you to do something about it. Find the help, find the coaching, find the systems, regulate your time in the morning. Make sure that you're using your biochemistry in the right way that works for you. And I promise you'll see different results.
Another thing I'll say about this is, I don't know if this is my Angelique who's coached with me. If it is, then I know a little bit of inside baseball here. I think a lot of us have overcommitted ourselves, right? And we don't remember leverage, which is that leverage is, if I do this thing, then I do this thing. There is an order of operations. We can't do everything at once, but we can do things and accomplish something and then build on that accomplishment to the next thing. And so for me, when I see people saying this thing to me, and let's assume this isn't the Angelique that I know for a second, because I'll just take it as a more generic one. When people come to me and then I dig into their life and I do an entry sort of interview with them, I almost always discover that they're overcommitted, that they've got too much going on, right? And what we tend to do is we tend to lighten the load, focus them, and we do something we call flood your attention. When you cut everything out of your life and you flood your attention on one thing, you get results on that thing, right? But when it's being a light bulb versus a laser, when we're spreading our energy across volunteer commitments, and we're the president of our kids' PTA, and we're coaching the baseball team, and we're also starting a business on the side, and we're a sales professional, and we're doing this, we've got all this stuff going on, and then we become mystified when we're not moving the ball forward on any of these. So for me, a big thing is cut, right? There's at this point in my business, there's way more opportunities people want me to get involved in than I have time to get involved in. And the reason I don't is because I want to be the very best in the world at one thing rather than pretty crappy at a bunch of different things, right? Yeah. And I just know my resources and I know who I am. And so what's great, and the other thing is, like salespeople, when I'm called to be on, I need to be on. When I've got to have that extra in the gas tank. And if there's no extra in the gas tank, then when it comes time to shine, when it comes time to coach, when I reach for that inspiration moment, there's nothing there. I'm out of gas. I can't impress somebody. I can't create a transformation in somebody.
And be careful about being addicted to urgency, because some people love that.
Yes. Okay.
And remember that if you love urgency, be honest with yourself. And that's the first step into getting rid of that urgency, is saying, I love it. It's an addiction. It makes me feel significant. It allows me to distract myself from all of the stuff that's going on in my life. And that will support you in starting to make that change.
I love that, because I'm a recovering urgency addict myself. And what I find was that getting clear on that one thing, right? So that vision of who I'm being in my career and where I want to have that expertise and that mastery allows me to eliminate. So when I start to feel that overwhelm and overflow, I go back and start asking my questions. How does this move me forward in that desired expertise, in that desired area of that vision I've created for myself? So you've heard them both say repeatedly, everything that Rod and Demir are speaking on is taking them to one path. And it allows them to stay attracted to that thing that they're creating versus distracted, because there's so much that's going to come in. It doesn't stop. There's no way to stop the distractions. You must own your mind and your time, as you've heard them say repeatedly here. So I'm going to go to, do you guys want to keep going? We're at 2:56.
Do one more.
All right.
Let's do one more. Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so we have Miguel here, and he says, how to make time for calls versus reacting on clients. So what is the best setup to create a flow in terms of consistency?
Well, I will just jump in here real quick, and then I'll toss it to Rod. I will say, for me, probably the key thing, and for a long time in my business, I did everything. I was the coach, I was the salesperson, right? When I went from working from big companies back to just being a one-man band, we had to do everything. And one of the best things that happened for me was I actually had call days. So I had days where all I did was do calls, inbound calls, outbound calls, right? Just calls. And then I had days when I had what I call deep work days, where I actually have to create something, create content for my business, create a video, create a course. And then I have days when I'm doing the coaching. And so for me, I'm looking forward to opportunities to make somebody wait, right? I'm not afraid of making somebody wait. I'll say, hey, listen, here's my call days. I can schedule you in for next week. And they say, do you have something tomorrow? No, I don't have something tomorrow. I've got something next week, right? And so for me, that to me is, I think, a huge thing for me, because what happens